Hello everyone, this is my Whimsy Wednesday Creative Live number 82. It's up on YouTube because I couldn't connect to the internet on Wednesday when I was supposed to do this live on Facebook. If you haven't watched or don't usually join my Facebook Lives, this is a long video. It's done from woe to go, so use the fast forward button when you need to. And please excuse my waffling and not knowing the names to things. Just call it old age. But please enjoy. I'd love to get your comments. Thanks. Good morning or good evening, depending on when you are watching this video. So I'm on YouTube today because Facebook, or my service provider actually, was not playing nice. So there was an issue somewhere with both 4G and Wi-Fi. So I'm just recording this on my own, which is nowhere near as much fun. Let's see if I can, without all the chatting, if I can keep this down to a reasonable time frame. So this is the card that we're creating today. This is probably backwards. Yes, it is. So it's a collage type card, and I've used just about every stamp set on my shelf, I reckon. Well, probably not quite. I do have a few little tweaks after I've done this. I thought there must be a better way to do this. So there's a few little tweaks as we go along, but basically we'll be recreating exactly the same card. So I have a few shout outs, and I'll do that when I flip this around, which I have no idea how to do on a YouTube video, but let's see how we go. Let's see if I can flip this or not. Be a bit sad if I can't, hey? Huh? Okay, I'm back. Obviously, you can't flip a video like, and when you're actually recording like you can when you're in Facebook. Lesson learned. So I've just pasted this together. So this is the card, the right way around. I had a lot of fun creating this last night. I quite like it. It's a pretty special card, and you would have to put a little bit of padding on the front of it, I believe, to post it. But yes, I was quite happy with myself once I finished. I have used quite a few different stamp sets though, because I just needed different things, and picked out different stamp sets as I went along. So I do have a couple of shout outs as to regards this card. I did take the inspiration from a lady who I believe is Russian, and I hope I'm not getting that wrong. Her name is Alina Buhai, B-U-H-A-I, and she has an Instagram channel. So if you wanted to go and have a look, she does amazing collage work. This is like baby steps. And I took one of her cards and just cased it, but it's baby steps. She's not a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. She just does beautiful collage stuff. So go and check her out if you want the full-on, heavy-duty, beautiful, many, many, many layers collage type artwork that she does. And you'll probably see where I got the inspiration from this card from. If you can find her on Instagram. The other person I have a little shout out for is Sharon Martin. Sharon is in my team, and she created a card recently, and I can't quite remember what flowers she used, but she did run them through the textured embossing folder, which I can't remember the name of it. It goes with touches of texture, I think, or touches of textile, something like that. But anyway, makes these little flowers look like they're created from fabric. So last week we did metal, this week we're doing fabric. And so thank you, Sharon. I loved that look, so I took that inspiration from you to actually emboss the flowers to make them look like fabric. So these are all of the, I'm using Positive Thoughts plus the Nature's Thoughts dies that go with it, a little bit of Forever Fern, plus obviously the die to cut out some of the leafage. I'm using these beautiful big sentiments from Ridiculously Awesome, and also Butterfly Wishes for the little butterfly here. Could have used this butterfly, but it was a little bit small, so I've decided to use the slightly larger Butterfly out of Butterfly Wishes. So they're all very similar sets, you know, very nature oriented. So, but I've used quite a few. So the idea with collage is to pull out what you have and just create something with what you have. So that's what I've done. And you could create this similar look and make it a little bit different and make it your own just by using whatever you have to hand. And it will look just as good. All right, so to start off with, let's have a look at our cardstock. I've got a basic grey card base, cut to just your standard card size. I've got a piece of the Designer Series paper. Now this one is from, and I have it here, one of the Christmas papers. It is called Poinsettia Place Designer Series paper. So I use the wood grain. It's one of the basic patterns. The other side is glorious as well, but there are pine cones and there's poinsettias obviously in different designs. It's a lovely paper, and I didn't really look at the back side of all of these patterns until I opened it up. And they're beautiful, and not just for Christmas. You know, you could use them for all sorts of other things. So there's the wood grain again. Look at this beautiful scroll type paper. So yeah, not all for Christmas. So you know, you can buy that. You can get these papers and then keep them for after Christmas or for other. There's another pattern, because the pattern's on the back, and that makes these papers so versatile. So I love that wood grain when I saw it. So we'll be using that layer, and then I also have a layer of the brushed metallics. Now the brushed metallics are also out of the holiday catalogue, or we shouldn't call it the holiday catalogue anymore. It's the end of year mini catalogue. I can never remember the dates. But there is this brush cardstock in there. It's called Brush Metallic Cardstock, and it's just a couple of the colours. It is 6 sheets, so you get 2 of each colour. So there's this goldy colour, there's a coppery colour, and then there's this, it's sort of a cross, it's a different gold, not as yellowy gold. And that's what I'm using today. Where did it go here? That's the one I'm using today. So it's quite pretty. It's slightly got lines on it where it's actually brushed, which makes it a little duller as some of our really shiny metallics. So that's another layer in there just to add a bit of sparkle. And then of course got lots of, this is just regular Whisper White, and then I've got scraps of the thick Whisper White for my collage elements. So that they're just not any particular size, just scraps. So I've made these particular layers here just a little bit smaller than I normally would, because I didn't want to hide all of that beautiful wood grain. So we're going to start off with the embossing folder. Now I really probably should look up the name, seeing as I'm using it. And I can see I've got ink in there, so I'm just going to clean that out before I... bear with me while I get a baby wipe. Just going to clean the inside of this folder before I emboss my first layer, because it's got a bit of ink on there. Look at that. Clean it up after my creative frenzy last night. So just take that out with a bit of baby wipe and then dry it. Oh, I don't need to dry it because it actually will work in my favour to have a little bit damp. I'm going to emboss the wood grain in the folder. So I'll just do that off camera so I don't have to drag my cut and emboss machine in. But I am using just the base plate. This is a 3D embossing folder, so I'll use the grey embossing mat. So that's the sandwich for those, and run it through whatever machine you currently have. And it just gives that piece of paper a whole different look with a bit of texture in it. So, you know, fabric textured wood grain, not really sure where that came from, but anyway, it looks great. It just adds just that little extra element to it. So we can actually put all these together. The other side's so gorgeous as well. Such a shame. That's why it's great that there's 2 pieces in each set, because you get to use both sides. So So this is nowhere near as much fun. I mean, I don't have to watch for comments, but it's nowhere near as much fun. I'll also get a little timer at the top of my page, so I don't need Bridget or Sharon to be my little clock. There's a timer ticking away, normally where the comments would show, so I can see how far over I'm going time-wise. And this one, the white piece is going to go on after we've done our magic on that. So we'll set that aside and put together our background piece, which is this white layer. So the very first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of embossing, so we can do some Emboss Resist. So I've got some white embossing powder here. And I'm going to use the butterfly out of Butterfly Wishes. So that's this one here. I'll just grab a block. And give this a little bit of a swipe with my embossing buddy. And grab my Versamark. It says clean on the front, but it's not so clean anymore. Alright, so I want a butterfly somewhere around here. And we'll put another one down over here, which does get covered up, but does add a little bit of interest in the background. So I've got two butterflies towards the bottom part of my piece of cardstock. A bit of a tap. And honestly, if you get little speckles on this one, it really doesn't matter. So we'll just heat that with my heat tool. Excuse the noise for a minute. And we will, while we're letting that settle, we'll do some stamping. So I've got over here some Petal Pink, beautiful soft pink colour, and I'm going to use one of the sentiments from Ridiculously Awesome. Now, you might be wondering why on earth, when I go to do this, is she stamping, you know, one lot of words over another lot of words. I was actually just trying to create a random text look, which I took inspiration from one of Lena's cards. And she uses a lot of text, very soft text in the background. So that's why I'm doing this. You're not really meant to read the whole phrase, just parts of it. So I'm using You Are My Sunshine, and I'm stamping it off so I do get a much softer look. And it's not going to fight with the sentiment that I'm going to put over the top. Oops. So if there's anybody on here who's watching this YouTube video that doesn't normally watch my lives, and you're thinking, this woman is such a waffler. Oh, that's what I do in my lives. I waffle and we chat, and so it's different when you're, at least when I'm filming this for YouTube, I'm not responding to all the comments, which then make no sense if you're watching it back as a YouTube video. Next up, we'll do another word over the top, and I'm going to use Basic Grey. And I'm going to use, out of the Positive Thoughts stamp set, Sending Positive Thoughts and Friends Like You Mean More Every Year. So this is a card that I am making for a friend. So they are phrases that relate to being a friend. You are my sunshine, And then friends like you mean more every year. So I'll just position this over the top of this sentiment. Now again, you're not meant to read the whole thing, you're just meant to get the vibe. So that's stamped over the top at full strength. And then the "You Are My Sunshine" sort of recedes into the background. You can read it, but it's not fighting with that sentiment on the top. So now we're going to add a little bit of colour to our back panel. So I'm going to do this with a sponge brayer. So I've got a silicone mat here. And I'm going to add some basic grey ink to my silicone mat. I'll pick it up with the sponge brayer. Now I used this sponge brayer last night and I didn't bother cleaning it because I knew I'd have to clean it to use it today. So it's got a little bit of ink in it already, and I'm just picking up the ink. The reason that I'm doing this, if you haven't watched my lives before, from the silicone mat is I don't like picking the ink up directly from these soft ink pads because it can degrade your ink pad, especially if I'm doing this in a class situation and I have lots of people running their foam brayer over the top of the ink pad. It certainly would probably degrade your ink pads pretty quickly. So the solution is to just apply some ink to a silicone mat and pick it up from there. So I'm going to start at the bottom. You can see that, can't you? I'll just get on camera and then work up, getting lighter as I get towards the top. So I'm going to create it's not really oh, I suppose it is an ombre type effect. I want darker at the bottom, fading out towards the top. Just continue to pick up whatever ink's left on there. Now I do want it much darker than that, so we'll add some more ink onto our silicone mat. Pick it all up. And then it's just, start off with a little bit of pressure, not too much because you don't want lines, and just keep adding the colour, and then as you go up the page, my touch gets lighter and lighter. So it's not that the ink's coming out lighter, it's that I'm lifting the pressure off the card as I go further up. And just adding more pressure down at the bottom. Just got a bit of a line there. Thankfully, most of this will be covered over. So if you do get a few lines and streaks here and there, it doesn't matter. Nothing really matters when you're making a card. It's supposed to be fun, and if it ends up a bit different than what you're first envisaged, it doesn't really matter there either. You've just created something of your own. Okay, so that's nice and dark at the bottom, and it's sort of ombre up towards the top. Get that out of the road so I don't put something on it. And before this dries totally, I am going to give it a bit of a splatter with some water. So I have over here just a regular paintbrush, which I've just popped in my water, and I'm just going to splatter down. This is what will be seen. The collage will be on the right hand side, so you won't see much over there. So I'll just add a couple of splatters down over here, mainly to this left hand edge. You can see that reacts with the water and it will start to lift, and as it dries it will get quite a lot lighter. So I'll just set that aside to dry out of the road where I won't put anything on it. And we'll move on to all of the collage elements. Get rid of that. So I have pre-done a lot of this ahead of time because I knew it would take some time. I've pre-done the flowers, and I'll tell you why later, but I am going to create them here for you now. So we've got the two daisy punches. So this is the large and this is the medium in the daisy punches. I have some petal pink cardstock and I have some of the new bumblebee cardstock. So I'm going to punch out two of the large now will I have to get another piece of bumblebee maybe. Maybe, I don't think I'm going to fit that on there. Oh, maybe. No, not quite. I'll grab another piece of Bumblebee to do another large one. I need 2 and 2 small. And then we need 3 small of the Petal Pink. 1, 2 and 3. And I'll just grab another piece of Bumblebee cardstock. I've got one here that I can, it's big enough. Oh, yep. Okay, so that's all the punching of the flowers that we need to do, so they can go over here. So then I have here some Bumblebee ink and a sponge, and also some Petal Pink ink and a sponge. Now you could also use a sponge dauber. This is, you know, your personal preference as to what you prefer to use. Oops, we'll just have to hide that bit. I got a little chip out of my... Alright, so we use the Petal Pink first, and all I'm going to do is just apply some ink just to give it a little bit of texture. Doesn't need much. Like so. Pop those aside for a minute, and then we'll do the same thing with the Bumblebee. Just flick them up the right way and just apply a little bit of texture to all of the petals. Doesn't need much, doesn't matter if it's patchy, doesn't have to be, we're looking for texture, so if it's not solid, all the better. I'm just trying to keep this short because I don't know that YouTube will like me very much if I try and upload one of my very long videos. Now, I really should dry these with the heat tool because I'm going to put them inside that embossing folder. So the same embossing folder, which I can't remember the name of, which I better look up and put in the comments, I guess. I'm going to put all these flowers inside here. I'll do the pink ones first. So I'm just going to run those again. So same sandwich, the base plate, and then the grey because it's a 3D embossing folder. And just run them through your machine. And because I haven't dried these with the heat tool, the ink will transfer slightly onto your top sheet. It doesn't matter for these ones because the Petal Pink's very light. But do remember to clean this off. Again, same sandwich, and run those through. Can't see it, but yeah, take it from me, you probably need to clean that off. So now these flowers have that gorgeous texture in them. So the Petal Pink ones, I'm happy with the way they are, so they can sit there, but these Bumblebee ones, I want to add, really highlight that texture. So I'm going to add some cinnamon cider. Just lightly over the top, just to pick up on the texture. I could probably zoom you in. Yes. Videoing works well with a zoom in. I just have to remember to stay on camera. I've got no one to yell at me to tell me, zoom out. And so you can see I've just highlighted that texture a little bit in those flowers. So now I'm going to take something round. You could use a pencil, you could use a brush. I'm going to use, it's not very round. What did I use last time? I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool, and I'm going to round these petals a little bit. Now you have to be a bit careful here that you don't go so hard that you pull the petals off, because then you're going to have to start again, and we don't want that. So I've got my finger in the middle, and I'm going to pull the leaf, pull each petal upwards against my fingernail, and then round each petal. So I'm not really pulling, I'm just sort of pushing the petal into shape around the barrel of this Take Your Pick tool. So you can use anything that's fairly round, pencil, marker, and then you end up with this, it's sunken in the middle and the petals pop up from the outside. So do that for all of the flowers, even the little ones, although they're harder to do this too. And easier to rip off, so just be very gentle. We're going to help this shape stay in place when we're done, so it's not like it's going to have to retain that memory forever, because we are going to put some dimensionals under the curve of the leaves, of the petals, which will then help them stay in place. So we'll do it for these ones as well, these petal pink. So if you go to watch this afterwards, especially all those girls who come along regularly to my lives, I would love it if you would leave a comment underneath so that I can go back and actually, you know, respond. And I'm sure you're all missing talking to each other as much as chatting with me. Now we need to glue these together. So I'll just use a little bit of liquid glue. Just offset them. Small ones go in the middle. And we'll do these ones as well. We'll put that one with the bit out right on the bottom. That might get covered over. So this is 3, so you don't want to, so that it's offset by 1/3, not by 1/2. Okay, so they both need to dry for just enough time to let that glue grab and set. Okay, so we'll just set those aside for a wee minute, and we'll do the butterfly part of our collage. So I'm using that same butterfly that I used to emboss with, which I still have over here on my block. Just clean the Versamark off it. I'm going to stamp that with Sahara sand. And we'll punch that out with the coordinating butterfly duet punch. It does have a fine little white border. Oh, I've got an extra bonus butterfly there. And now I'm going to apply some Wink of Stella to this butterfly and just give that a chance to dry. So now the Wink of Stella is liquid, obviously, and because this is not a waterproof ink, it actually spreads the colour a little. I don't know if you can see, so it spreads the colour and de-intensifies the white, which is quite pretty, but it does mean that the body sort of loses a little bit of its oomph, the body of the butterfly. So I chose to add some, I've got a, what's this one? Bronze. I don't think I'd use bronze. I think I use this one here, which is dark soft suede, because even though this looks darker, I don't think it is. That's bronze, and this is soft suede. You can see it's quite a lot darker, despite the colours on the outside. So I'm just going to add just freehand in his body. But you know, if you're not comfortable doing that, then of course you wouldn't have to. Make his body look a little bit plumpish. That just defines his body a little bit. Okay, so I'll set that aside to dry as well. Now what else do we need? So I have pre-done quite a bit of stuff here, so we didn't have to do it. So I've taken the Nature's Thoughts dies, and I have cut out of, now this one is out of that same brushed metallic cardstock, which I don't know what the name of the colour is. I suppose I should find that out at some point. So I've done a feather, which has that beautiful texture in it for the feather bits, and that little tiny leaf out of the same. Then I also used copper, just regular copper, to do a leaf and another one of those little feathers. I also used the Forever Fern stamp set and dies. Oops. Let me grab those. Oh, forgot to put that back in. I die cut out of soft suede that little one. I quite like this little one because it's got that extra bit of texture in each leaf. So I die cut 2 of those, and I stamped this stamp here with Sahara sand and then die cut that out twice. So that was Forever Fern and the dies that go with that. I also stamped up my sentiment and cut it out. So that it was just hugs. So the stamp is actually Hugs, Prayers, Love, but I stamped this with basic grey and then just trimmed around it into a little rectangle with diagonal edges. So that's my sentiment done. So the only other thing that needs to go on the front of here is some gold thread. Now the Forever Fern duo of ribbon and twine has this gold ribbon twine, sorry, in it that is made up of multiple threads of gold, and so it's quite nice. You could just use it as the twine the way it is, but it's quite nice to unravel it and make it into a fluffy bunch of twine. So now doing this doesn't mean that it wants to stay unraveled, so you actually have to pull it all apart. But once you start to pull it apart, it does tend to take that ravel out of it. Take the ravel out of it. Oh dear. Cheryl language. And you end up with a whole heap of fine gold threads. So I'll just do this one as well. I've done 2. This is a shorter piece. Someone's chainsawing outside. I don't know if you can hear that through my microphone. He's been chainsawing since early this morning, so I have no idea what he's cutting down, but he's doing a good job of it. So once you actually pull it apart, it does just form these lovely soft gold threads. So that's the other element. So I'll just pop those over here. There is something else that we need to do before we start to put this collage together, and before I forget. This brushed metallic, so the foil cardstock is quite expensive. It's just the nature of it. So if you're going to use it for a background layer, you've got all this bit that you won't see. So you can die cut something out of it because you're not going to see it. So don't waste it by just hiding it in behind. So I elected to die cut some of these beautiful ornate, what are these ones called? The ornate layers dies, which go with the ornate something or other stamp set. I'm such a good saleswoman, aren't I? Not really. So I'm just going to die cut that out of the middle of there. So again, I'll do that off camera. So you just use your normal sandwich for this, your thin die adapter, and whatever plates you normally would use. All machines are a little bit different. So place that, whatever you're going to die cut out of the middle, as long as you leave enough around the edge so that it's not going to impinge on your border, you can die cut anything you like, really. So I'll cut this out. So you're not going to see any of that, it's going to be underneath, but you've got all this gorgeous die cut bits. I'll pop all those out later, but so you end up with, this is the one I did earlier, you end up with this gorgeous metallic scroll type frame to use in another project, so you're not wasting that, you know, valuable foil cardstock. Just pop all that over there. So yeah, I just saw that there and thought I best do that before I get into collaging, because I'll get so excited with my color collage that I will forget to do that. Now, while we've got our little flowers, these are dry now, so I will show you that with this one I put on here some of the elegant faceted gems, which were quite small. So then I thought, well, I'll add a little bit of, this is my experimenting last night, I added some of the shimmery crystal effects over the top, but I'm really not happy with the way that, especially on the yellow, it's not so bad on the pink, but on the yellow I wasn't happy with the way that looked, so I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I'm not using the elegant faceted gem at all, just going to apply some of the shimmery crystal effects. You could just use regular fine tip glue, but I'm finding that the shimmery crystal effects is a little bit thicker and seems to hold its shape a little bit better. And then if you happen to miss any, well, all you're going to see is that beautiful shimmer. So I've just popped some into the center of the flowers and just spread it out to as far as I want it. Now, there are some gems that go with the Artistry Blooms suite of products, and had I had those, that's what I would have used. They're clear, but I didn't have any of those, so what I pulled out was an old retired pack of these are the Tranquil Textures Sprinkles. I think they're from the last catalogue, oops. And that's what I'm going to use. So use any sort of little, even seed beads would work. And then I'm just going to drop them into, so I've got, they're white and clear. So I'm just going to drop a heap of little beads onto the glue. Now this glue does take a little while to dry. So while I'm doing this here now, I won't be using these flowers. I'll use the ones I prepared earlier, which are all dry. But just go ahead and push those beads into the center of the flower. So somewhere you've got some clear ones, it looks a little different. I don't actually mind that, it looks more natural. So I've gone and pulled out all the white beads because these beads are actually, they were the blue ones. I don't know if you remember those. So I've just gone ahead and pulled out the white or the iridescent pale creamy colour. And so you just put as many of those as you want to, and then once you've finished, you could tip them all on there if you wanted to, instead of placing them like I am. And then just press them down, and then once you've finished, tip off any excess that hasn't stuck to the glue. So you end up with this beautiful little seed bead type center in your flowers. So of course that does take a while to dry, so I didn't want to take the risk of using those today and maybe messing them up and getting glue everywhere, but I think they look quite pretty. So I'll put those ones aside and I'll bring in the ones that I did earlier that are now nice and dry. Oops. So there's one, it's a little crooked, and they're the ones that I did earlier. You can see I've curled my flowers up, so they're all nice and dry and ready to use. So now we can go ahead and put our collage together. So before we start gluing anything down, this is the piece we created earlier. This is all dried nicely and created that nice speckle, so we can glue all that together first and glue it onto the front of our card. So I'll just pop some glue onto the back of here. Now I am a fan of the green glue, the multi-purpose liquid glue. But of course you could also use the Stamp and Seal or tape or whatever you normally use. I just like the liquid glue because I am sometimes not very straight when I put my layers on. And so this just gives me, especially when I'm live, it gives me that little bit of wriggle room to get it right and not be trying to pull things apart in the middle of my live. So I've got my card front here and I'm just going to apply a little bit of glue onto here, and then that can go centrally onto that wood grain panel. And now we are ready to put our collage together. So I'll grab some glue dots. We'll put the thread down first. So I'm just going to, how are we going for time? 41 minutes. I'm probably going to do my normal hour. Let's hope YouTube doesn't crack up at me about loading that up. So I'm just going to make a circle of this gorgeous thread. It might be a bit long. That's okay. We'll fix that. So it starts off looking quite neat, but eventually it will, as I start to glue this down, you'll notice that it starts to spread out. I probably will have to cut some off. So I'm just going to put a few glue dots down here, oops, that I can then place this gold thread onto. This wants to unravel on me. My glue dot's stuck to my fingernail. Oops, stuck to my fingernail again. Now that is probably a little bit large, so I'm just going to fix that. And this is where it gets all unraveled because you're mucking around with it so much. I'll grab my scissors. Just trim some of these excess bits away. I'll have to do this bit up here as well. Need some more glue dots there. Let's just get rid of these extra bits so that they're not sticking out behind. Too much, doesn't matter if they stick out a little bit. Not too much. Okay, and then the second piece is going to go down the bottom. So I'll just actually add some more glue dots here, just to hold all this in place a bit better. Couple down the bottom here. I'm right at the end of my glue dot roll. Okay, and I'll grab that other little, this is a shorter little group of gold thread. It's probably a more sensible length. Place that down there, just so that it sticks out down the bottom. So all that mess will be covered over by the rest of our collage elements. So I've got these brown leaves can go on next. So this is the soft suede. And I'm just going to cut off these bits. I don't want them to go outside the edge of the card too much. So it can go down there. We'll grab a little bit of green glue. You could sponge these. I'm just adding little dots of glue. And then that can go, don't worry that you're covering your words over, because as I said before, those words are just there to give people an impression of what's underneath. They're just random friend phrases, really. Hold that down until it sticks. Now I didn't use a lot of glue. If it doesn't stick for you, you can just add some after you've finished putting this all together. This one can be full, don't need to cut any of that off. Most of it will get covered over anyway. And the same, I'll just add some little dots of glue. And it can hang out the bottom here. So sometimes when you've got inked cardstock, the liquid glue takes a little bit of holding down to make it work. Okay, so next up we'll put down these two images that I stamped and then die cut, and they'll sort of go in here and here like that. And again, I'm just using, I'm not mounting them up with dimensionals. We're going to have a lot of height with the flowers, so I don't think any of these need to be on dimensionals. This is where all your thread will start to be held down in place. This one's a little bit skew-iff. Just pull that out there a little bit. And some on the back of here. Of course, these are all, every single one of these that you do is going to be a little bit different. I think I say that about every card that I make. When I recreate it, it's my little self-waiver. Don't expect it to look the same, because it's not going to. So we'll alternate, we'll put copper and that other brushed metallic together, and copper and the brushed metallic together on the other end. So again, I'm going to just glue these down with some just straight liquid glue. You might like to use glue dots if you would maybe prefer. These feathers, or this foil card, seems to take a little longer to stick. And I've left these end bits without any glue, so they sort of raise up a little bit. So I'll just hold those for a second while they dry. And then for the little tiny leaf bits, now you could of course sponge these, probably that's what I should do, but I'm again just going to use a little dab of glue, but sponging would probably work a bit better. Sponging your glue on. See, it doesn't want to, it just takes a little while to make it stick. It's got to dry. And this little one, just little dabs of glue. This one can just tuck in underneath here. Just does not want to stick. Oops. That one doesn't want to stick either. They will take a little minute to dry, so we'll work on our flowers while they're drying, while they're sticking. Just make sure that they're actually attached to the paper. Right, so we'll just put that aside for a minute and we'll work on our flowers because they will be the next thing to go down. So we've got our flowers here that have been nicely curved. What we want to do is hold that curve. So I'm going to use my black mini dimensionals and I'll take all the sorry, I'm working over my phone here. It makes it a little bit hard to see. You want to get rid of all of the it's easier to take the back, well for me it's easier to take the backings off on the sheet than to try to fiddle with them once they're actually on the flower. Now you are going to need quite a few of these. So you're going to end up with a lot of those annoying little backs everywhere. Actually, hearing the chainsaw is a little bit different from you hearing my stomach rumble. Especially for these morning lives, I never get a chance to really have a coffee or anything before I start. So for the little small flower, we'll just go round and put some of the dimensionals in behind the petals where they're curved upwards. This is why I couldn't use the other flowers that I just created, because that glue would still be wet. As soon as I turned them upside down, all that would come off and smoosh and everything. So that's one done, and let's do this one. Now this one is larger. I could just use the larger dimensionals, but it's not actually the size that I want them to be larger, it's the height. So I want these petals to sit up more, so I'm doubling up my little dimensionals. So I'm putting one on top of the other. one short. Take one more backing off. Well, I'm nearly up to the hour mark. I'll be finished in just a tick. We might make it in an hour. Let's see how we go. All right, so now when we glue these down, hopefully all those other bits are stuck now. I'm going to put some liquid glue, or you could use glue dots, in the center part of the flower. Place that in position and push down on the center so that the dimensionals will automatically go into place, but it's that center bit that you want to hold down until it's glued, and then that will hold your center of your flower in, and the dimensionals will lift the petals up, and because you've curved them, they'll roll over the top of the dimensionals. But it's getting the center bit to stick. And we'll pop this one down here. So try not to come off the edge of your card too much, because that is where your card lifts up. Just hold it down till it sticks. And then we've just got the butterfly and the sentiment to do. I'm just holding that there. With the sentiment, I'm going to sponge a little bit around the edges. So I've just got my Sahara Sand ink pad here and my Sahara Sand sponge. Multitasking here, doing two things at once. I think that's stuck now. So I've just got a little bit of ink, and I'm just going to come in from the edges just to soften the white a little bit. So still want to leave the center a little lighter. That just softens that. My butterfly is going to be stuck on, so I'll just give him a little tweak upwards, and we'll use some more of these small dimensionals to hold his wings up. Now I'm going to have to do one side higher than the other because part of the butterfly sits on a fairly flat part of the card, and the chainsaw stopped. You probably can hear my belly now. So this butterfly will sit here like this, and you can see this is higher. So this side's going to need those doubled up dimensionals. Doing one at a time might be better. And then the side that's sitting over the top of the flowers will just need the one. And then instead of using glue down the center, I'm actually going to use a couple of glue dots because this is all very textured here, and I'm not sure how much the glue would hold. So we'll roll those glue dots down into the center of his body. And just rolling them over, popping them in the center, if it will stay there. And we'll do one more. Here's one. Thought I could feel one. And then our little butterfly. So put the glue dots down first. And then you can see they're sitting there quite nicely now and holding the wing up, and these ones are as well. So it just keeps the wings up and keeps them up at a similar height. Butterfly, and the last little thing to put on is the sentiment. So with my little hugs, because I haven't put glue all the way to the edge of my elements, I should be able to slip the sentiment in underneath. I might need to cut a little bit more off that. Like so. can sit down in there, and we'll just pop that on with a little bit of liquid glue, or you could use some glue dots. Just lift this leaf up. So you still want to see your word, so just find a good spot where you can still see your word, and the little sentiment can just glue down like so. And that is it. So I haven't done the inside of this card, so let's pull the other one in as well. So, you know, they're all just a little bit different. Never going to ever be the same. I've done the butterflies slightly differently. Just see a little bit of the butterfly underneath here. But I do think that these beautiful seed bead flower centers just, I don't know, they just add something else to that than what I had done before. We don't have any of the large, like the faceted gems were really good because they were quite large. And so these little flowers, I was a little less exuberant with my beads on these little flowers, so I think this one actually looks better. I was a bit, you know, over the top with my beads here. But yes, that is my little effort at collage. It is now 59 minutes and we're just about to click over to exactly 1 hour. So I'm going to say goodbye. I'll go away and load this up onto YouTube, and I'll let everybody know once it's up. Thanks, ladies, and cross your fingers we have better success next week with our connectivity. Bye.